morning. This is Garrett and this is Luke, and we're here to talk to you about vaccinations and vaccinations in children. Luke, why don't you start?
Anti-vax movements get a lot of hate, but if you truly inform yourself to the pros and cons, when you write off the argument against vaccinating your children, what argument are you writing off? Let me make a case for you. Vaccines are more risk than let on, admittedly. If the government can force you to vaccinate your children, essentially stripping you of your rights, what else can they force you to do in the future? Admittedly, I researched this argument coming from a for-vaccinating stance, but I've spent the past few weeks researching this topic to make a compelling argument to you. First, I'll enlighten you to the adverse side effects and potential risks of vaccines. Next, we must talk about informed consent, laws and regulations about vaccinating children. Finally, I want to tell you what we can do about this.
That sounds great, Luke, but many parents are vaccinating their children all over the United States every year. So what is a vaccine exactly, Garrett?
Vaccines are injectable or are an injectable substance that introduces the body to a small amount of a disease so that your immune system can create antibodies to prevent the patient from getting said disease without infecting the patient with the disease. The effect that vaccines have had on the prevention of disease around the world is extraordinary. Vaccines prevent between 2 to 3 million deaths per year and could prevent 1.5 million more if access to vaccines was improved. Vaccines are an incredible technology and one of the greatest medical advancements in human history. Without vaccines, millions of children will die from preventable diseases. I had no idea about the impact that vaccines have had on people's health, but after an extensive amount of research on vaccines, I can elaborate on the massive impact that they have on everyone's life. First, I will tell you about the impact of vaccine-preventable diseases around the world and how vaccines save children's lives. Second, I will explain how vaccines have many benefits both to your health and your wallet. Third, I will talk about how vaccines are the safest form of medical treatment and misinformation related to vaccines.
Let Luke explain the dangers of vaccinations for children and infants.
The argument for vaccinating children spends a lot of focus debunking the worries of people against vaccinating. So let's bring light to the risks and the things to be concerned about. According to Vaccines and Preventable Diseases, women should not get vaccinated within 6 weeks of getting pregnant or being pregnant. This means 6 weeks before the vaccine and 6 weeks after the vaccine. Now, I don't know about you, but are you voluntarily going to go 12 weeks without having sex? Specifically, vaccines like the MMR, that's the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, chickenpox, and shingles, are especially dangerous because they are live vaccines containing live strains of the diseases they're purported to protect against. This causes risk to you and your unborn child, according to the risk of vaccination in children and adults. So what happens if you get pregnant within this 3-month window? Is that a risk you're willing to take? According to an article by Mr. Hooker, ex-CDC employee Dr. William Thompson has been quoted as saying, statistically significant information was omitted, suggesting that African American males who received the MMR vaccine before 36 months of age were at an increased risk of autism. So what's the verdict from other doctors? Many have tried to speak out between the link between vaccines causing autism. While the vaccination itself may not cause autism, many vaccines carry a slew of harmful ingredients, including thimerosal. This is a mercury-containing compound, and mercury is linked to causing what? Autism. Other harmful ingredients, according to vaccine side effects and adverse effects, include aluminum, with the potential to cause neurological dysfunction, so that's fun. Formaldehyde, a chemical preservative and carcinogen. CTMB, a chemical with a name so long I can't pronounce it. This is an antiseptic. And glutaraldehyde, a disinfectant. The last two are used in hospitals and EMS vehicles to clean and sanitize their equipment. And if any of those chemicals sound familiar, that's because you can find them in a cigarette.
We live in a day and age where we can choose to be informed or simply let a trusted official, such as a pediatrician, tell us what is good for our child or not. Vaccination concerns are growing among 21st century parents, but there are dangers in not vaccinating a child, right, Garrett?
Vaccines prevent the deaths and infections of millions of people a year. About 85% of the world's children receive vaccines that protect against tuberculosis, polio, diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, and measles. These vaccines save about 2.5 million lives, and the hepatitis B vaccine, although not widely used, saves about 600,000 lives, according to the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Each year, approximately 3 million people die from vaccine-preventable diseases. Of those 3 million people, 1.5 million children under the age of 5 years old. And 4 of the top 10 causes of death for children under 5 are vaccine-preventable diseases, according to Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. There are vaccines for 18 of the world's most dangerous and deadliest diseases. Some of the most common diseases that vaccines can prevent include influenza, measles, and chickenpox. According to the CDC, over 21 million infections and 732,000 deaths among children have been prevented in the last 20 years in the United States alone. Vaccine-preventable diseases are cheap to prevent and expensive to treat. A study done by the CDC found that parents of children who contracted influenza had medical expenses ranging from under $300 to over $4,000 and missed between 11 and 73 hours of work depending on whether their child was able to recover at home or was hospitalized. For example, the HIV virus, the Haemophilus influenza type B, is an infection in the lining of the brain, and prior to its vaccine was the number one cause of meningitis. This disease can cost $43,000 to treat. The prevention of this disease alone will save an estimated $1.8 billion in disease fighting cost. In 1994, the U.S. government began a program called Vaccines for Children, which provides vaccines to children who would otherwise not be able to afford them. This program has saved about $1.4 billion in treatment and economic losses, according to Berkeley Wellness. Every $1 invested in immunization returns an estimated $16 in healthcare savings and an increased economic productivity, according to the World Health Organization.
But what is the better option for our children, Luke?
Misinformed consent greatly threatens our civil liberties as a free nation of the U.S. And this term keeps coming up. What is informed consent? According to Pro-Con on vaccines, informed consent is the right to knowledge of potential consequences. In this case, the risk of vaccinations as being informed as the patient by the doctor. Now, you already have a right to informed consent. This is whenever you go to the doctor's office and you are enlightened to the risk and benefits of any medication, medical examination, operation, procedure, or otherwise before commencement. When vaccines go against the practices of religion, you can have a religious exemption for your children, and this is your only current protection against having to have vaccinations to be included as a member of society. This threatens our freedoms.
The future of our next generation of children is the utmost concern of parents, and we should focus on that, right, Garrett?
Yes, there are many obstacles to vaccines effectiveness around the world. The largest obstacle is access in low-income countries. The major obstacle here in the United States is anti-vaccine advocates. Low-income countries pose a unique barrier to vaccination efforts. Many poor countries lack the infrastructure to actively vaccinate children born outside of large cities. This has led to the decline in immunization rates in these countries. For example, Zimbabwe's immunization rate dropped from 80% to 50% between 1990 and 2008 due to limited access to remote areas and few trained administrators for the vaccines. This is the case for many of the poorest countries in the world, yet the world as a whole is making a large effort toward vaccinations. In 2017, global coverage rates for the third dose of the diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis vaccine, DTP3, reached 85%. The largest obstacle for immunization in the United States are anti-vaccine advocates. Many vaccination advocates are misinformed on the dangers of vaccines. Much of this false information has been spread without any scientific evidence to back up their claims. There is no link between the autism and MMR vaccine or any other vaccine. This was a rumor that emerged from a study conducted in 1998 that was found to be majorly flawed and was retracted by the journal that published it, according to the World Health Organization. This rumor was also widespread in Japan. The Japanese government subsequently lifted the restriction, or the requirement for children to receive the MMR vaccine. In the 20 years since the government lifted the requirement, autism rates have not decreased, showing a lack of correlation between the two. Furthermore, autism rates in the United States and Japan have increased at similar rates despite the vaccination difference, likely due to an increase in detection. As stated by vaccines.gov, some vaccines contain preservatives such as thimerosal, which protect the vaccine from external fungus and bacteria. Preservatives are only used in vials of vaccines that contain multiple doses. The preservatives are used in these multi-dose vials because every time a dose is withdrawn, there is a chance for harmful bacteria to get inside. The preservatives kill all possible harmful bacteria. Most vaccines are available in single-dose vials and do not have preservatives in them, according to vaccines.gov. Vaccinations provide a huge benefit to the public, and across all the public health initiatives in the 20th century, vaccines were ranked number one in making a difference in improving the quality of life. Vaccines are the most studied and common form of drug prescribed by doctors and have the highest safety record of any form of medication, including antibiotics and antihypertensives, according to the Mayo Clinic. Major medical organizations such as the Mayo Clinic state vaccines are safe. The FDA and CDC do large-scale research on these vaccine or on every vaccine released to the public. This process can often take 10 to 15 years. According to the CDC, adverse reactions to vaccines are extremely rare. Many parents worry about vaccinating their children because they fear their child will have an adverse reaction to the vaccine or even contract the disease it is trying to prevent. Most vaccines contain weakened or dead forms of the disease and only contain part of the microorganisms responsible for the disease.
The odds of a bad reaction and minor side effects seem to be outweighed by all the benefits from vaccines. But what is the right way to go about this?
In my opinion, there's a right way and a wrong way to share the information that I've shared with you. What you want to do is share this information in an objective way with anyone willing to listen. You have to share with your friend, and you have to share with your family, and let them know everything that I've shared with you today. You don't want to just argue with people of a different belief system or create animosity against those that don't agree with you. A huge problem right now is that in mainstream media and multiple places on social media, anti-vaccines and people that take this stance have been widely demonized, and unfortunately will not be able to complete on these platforms. There are pockets and communities you might be able to find, such as moms against vaccinating their children, to find support. The lack of knowledge is the biggest threat to our democracy.
How can we make the right choices for our children? We must do what's best for our children, vaccine or not.
Vaccines are the safest and most effective form of disease prevention. Access to in remote locations in low-developed countries is hard, but many organizations such as UNICEF and the World Health Organization work at solving these problems every day to reach the goal of preventing childhood disease through widespread vaccinations. Education and information are the keys to an informed society. Information on ingredients, side effects, precautions, and warnings are available for every vaccine available for use in the United States. Your physician can give you a printout of this information in their office, or it is available online at FDA.org. The source that information is retrieved is also a major area of concern. Credibility of your source and information is very important when making a decision about you and your child's health.
So what is the best choice of action regarding vaccines, Luke?
Vaccines are not harmless. This we've learned. The lack of knowledge restricts informed consent, and state laws put a lot of pressure on people. We must fight for our rights, or risk losing them altogether. Picture the world today, where you do not feel that vaccines threaten your freedoms, but the effects are encroaching. You may or may not have children yet, but when you do, you will have to have them vaccinated. And you don't know what's in your vaccine. The status quo says that it's safe, and you listen to your authority figures and just go with it. Then it's 10 years from now, 20 years from now, your child has developed autism, and you don't know if it's natural causes or if it's from the vaccine because you weren't informed. And then in these trying times, the government is forcing more and more of these medical advancements upon you, and you have less decision what's right for you. Now imagine a future with reinforced informed consent, religious freedom, and freedom of choice. You're with your family at the doctor's office, and he's offering you a whole platter of information for you to look at it and say, I like this, I'll take this. I don't like that, I don't want that. Nothing is forced upon you. You are able to weigh the pros and cons of any given operation, procedure, vaccination, or injection, and you, the individual, make the choice how to protect yourself and your family. Look no further than Italy, where the population has chosen to take their right back over vaccinations and medical choice, garnishing a lot of attention from politicians to address these issues. President Trump has recognized the anti-vaccine movement and given it a voice. Follow his lead, and we can take back our rights. Because is this America, the land of the free, or America, the land of the free, unless we want to stick needles in your children?
We need to ensure that the safety and the future for the next generation to come is informed and free of choice.
Vaccines have had a profound impact on preventing disease and saving children's lives. They help people stay healthy and prevent large medical costs associated with preventable diseases. Vaccines are the safest medical treatment, and this record of safety is blurred by misinformation. What if it is possible to eradicate some of the deadliest and most contagious diseases on the planet in our lifetime? This is achievable with the help of vaccines. With the help of vaccines, 3 million people a year would avoid death, almost 1.5 million of those being children under the age of 5. That would be an incredible achievement for humanity. We eradicated smallpox in 40 years with the help of vaccines. We successfully contained one of the largest polio outbreaks in history at its peak in 1952, and by 1979 the United States is free of polio. Other vaccine-preventable diseases could be eradicated too. With a little bit of help pitched in from people around the world, we can defeat these terrible diseases. We also have to be properly informed about the vaccines that we use. Vaccines are not an enemy. They are a tool developed by us for us to help us live healthier lives. With more factual information made available about vaccines and the benefits they provide, we are more equipped to make informed decisions. Vaccines are one of the most incredible advancements in medicine in modern history. They are the safest and most effective way of preventing diseases. Please don't let unreliable and unsubstantiated statistics and information deter you from properly informing yourself on every aspect of vaccinations. Don't put yourself or your child's health at risk without being informed.
Thank you.
Thank you.